It keeps muting you.
I know. Are my AirPods open?
No.
Okay, well, it keeps connecting to my AirPods and they're not even out. Like, I don't know what's going on. Okay, let me just turn my Bluetooth off. All right, hopefully it works. Okay, y'all know me, Ashley Jackson, one-to-one coach at North Garland. And then Jennifer, will you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Jennifer. I am the one-to-one at Saxy, and Ashley's awesome. We love her.
But she's just going to kind of be helping have some input too, but she'll be checking the chat. So if y'all have questions at any time and I don't see it, just type it in the chat and then we'll get kicking with those answers. So I'm going to switch over to my other screen. And then here are the two links for the sign in and then to get the slides. And I will copy and paste those over. Let me grab them real quick. I'm sorry. I know it's switching things on y'all. So y'all can just click on those in the chat, but just give you a couple seconds to sign in and then you can get a copy of the slides. And the slides are a little bit different this time. It's not like an actual copy of them. And the reason I did this is because a lot of it is like a clickable tutorial type thing. So you'll be able to click on an image and then learn more about it from there. So it's like the published version of the slides. But I know all of y'all, and if you want to just send me an email and get a copy of the slides, you can do that also. Just this way, it's easier to click and learn more about each tool on the published slides. All right, okay. So hopefully you have those in the chat if you didn't get them from the slide, but they are in there. So we are going to get started with just like the fundamentals of forms. I know that y'all know how to set up a form at least, but just like what each one is, I'm gonna go over it pretty quickly just so you have an idea of what all the customization is that you can do with it, because I think that's like the best part of Google Forms. So first thing we always want to do is get started with our title, description, and then what is the toolbar that it gives you. So on the slides, I have an image of what the toolbar is and what all of those different things are. So if you ever need to figure out what one of the buttons is, you can come back here and see it. But if you want to follow along with me and like do this, you can actually type into a new tab or window, forms.new, and it will open up a brand new forms for you, so you don't have to go through and click on the 9 or the waffle and forms and open a new one. This is just an easier way to do it. So forms.new. And then once you are there, one thing we always need to remember is to title our stuff. Cool thing about forms is when you type a title up here, it also edits it and puts the title up at the top. So it just makes it easier and it's one less step that you have to do. So then you have an option to write a description, and then over on the right-hand side is where your main toolbar is for adding things to your form. So just going in order, if you put your mouse over each of them, they tell you what they are, but just adding a question, and then you're able to pick from here the different types of questions that you want to have and what the answers could be like. You can import questions. So this is a newer button that they added, I don't know, probably November, December-y time, but you can actually import any question from old forms that you have. So you can just go through all of yours and import them. Like if you were doing like a whole end of year review, then you could just pull questions from different forms rather than typing them all. You're able to add a text box is what I kind of consider it. So you can use this for like directions or any extra information students may need. I'm going to show you how I use this a little bit later. You can add images, so you can pick images to upload or from your Google Drive or even search directly in here for free to use images. You can add a YouTube video, so you can actually search for videos within here, or, oh, sorry, right here. Search for YouTube videos within here, or if you have the URL already, you can just copy and paste it, and it will put a video in there for you. Or you can add a section, and sections are kind of like pages on Google Forms, so it will separate to where you have to click the next button and it will take you to like a new page on it. So if you have a lot of questions, or there is something that you're doing specifically like notes I'm going to show in a minute, you can do the things on different sections so that students don't get overwhelmed with how much information there may be on the page. Okay, so that is the toolbar that's to the right of what your add-on features are. Now, looking at the toolbar at the top, I think this is the coolest one on here because there's so many different customizations that you can do with this. So on the slides, when you have this copy, if you just click on a picture, it will take you to learn more information about that. So just, I'm gonna go in order, kind of explain what they are and what you can do with them. So add-ons for forms, these are just customized extensions specifically for forms that are gonna enhance your experience within it. So I didn't use any of these add-ons for the webinar today, but these are 3 of my favorites that I use a lot, and just different things you can do with it. If you click on each of it, it'll take you to the web store, and you can learn more about them and add them to your Google Forms if you want to. Oh, sorry, I scrolled, it messed it up. Sorry. And if you don't have this puzzle piece button at the top bar, it just means that you don't have any add-ons yet. So you can either click here to learn how to get add-ons, or I'll show you when we get to the end. So you can just click on that bar at the top and it'll take you back. So this next button, I really like this because this is where you can set up your customized themes, and I'm all about making things look pretty, I guess that's what you would say. So I like to set up my own custom themes, either by making my own header and putting the image in, or even just changing the color from the basic purple that they normally set it as. And so when you're on here, you can change your colors. You can even add your own and make it your own hex color that you want. You can then change the background, and you can change the font styles. So if you are interested in making your own header, I put a little template on here for you. So if you click on this template, it will open up to a Google Draw, and you can actually edit this template and put it into your Google form. So if your Google form is about, I don't know, Newton's laws, then you could double click and be able to edit this Newton's laws 1 on here, and then upload it and make your Google form just have a theme to it. So there's an option for you. I know last week Jennifer did an entire session on Adobe Spark, and she uses Adobe Spark a lot to make customized headers and things. So if you ever want to do that, the size is always going to be 1600 by 400 pixels. I use Canva a lot, and that's how I set up my headers on there. So the next button that you'd see up there is the I, and this is a preview button. So whenever you're working on your Google form, you can click on this preview button, and it will show what the students would see, or someone who is filling it out. So I always use this to check and make sure that my form works correctly and it looks how I want it to. And whenever I'm filling it out, like for the name or anything like that, I just type in test. So even if I do submit it at the very end and it's on my like spreadsheet, then I know that it was just me filling it out and it's not anything I need to worry about, just something I could delete later so I can see it. From there, you have the settings button, and this is where you're able to customize your options. So the first box that will pull up is the general box, and this is the tab you're on. This is where you can collect emails or make sure that people can get response receipts. So especially if this was something that people were doing for, 504s or IEPs, things like that, you can get those response receipts so people have that back end that they did fill it out. You can restrict it to just GISD, or you can limit it to 1 response so people can, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I keep doing this, I'm messing it up. Stop. Okay, I need to stop touching it. So they can only fill it out 1 time. Like if you're specifically doing a quiz or an assessment on a Google form, you could have it that way so they can't go back and fill it out again. Another option is editing after submit. And this is one thing that I would always go back and forth with for my students that get extra time. on assessments, I liked to click this button because then they were able to go back to their form if they didn't finish it, and it was easier than them having to start over and do all of the answers again. So it's kind of one of those things where, do you want all students to be able to have this? Not necessarily, but there are some times that I did use it. And the one right underneath that is to see summary charts and text responses. So when students are done at the very end, can they go back and see what the summaries are for the different questions? So just being able to see kind of what people answered. So then in the middle, if you click on the presentation button, this is where you're able to edit if you want a progress bar. So if you have multiple sections and it's like 5 different tasks that students have to get through, then you're able to put a progress bar and it will show how long they have to go. You can shuffle your questions here, or you can show link to submit another response. So this is one of those things where you only want them to do it one time. You can just uncheck that show link and they won't be able to see a link to fill it out again or to go back to the beginning. My favorite part here is that you can customize your confirmation message. So at the very end, when they are done, you can actually type what you want your respondents to see. Sometimes I would have them do a follow-up activity just based on what the confirmation message is. So if they took an assessment online, I could say, all right, after this, you're going to go on to Google Classroom and complete the next assignment. I don't know. You can kind of make it whatever you want there, but you're able to tell them, hey, great, I got your link, or you could give them another activity to do right after it. And then on the last one, you can actually turn Google Forms into quizzes, which I feel like most of us know. So you can assign this and make it a quiz. What this does is it will go back to your form and it will make it into a key. So you can select the correct answers and you can select point values. So from there, you are able to have it automatically graded if you have all multiple choice or check answers. But if you do anything that is like a short answer or a paragraph, you will have to go back and review it later. So just keep that in mind when the grades go in. It's not going to automatically grade those short respondent ones. So a newer option they have on there is locked mode on the Chromebooks. Since we're working and students are learning at home, this is one thing that we don't want to touch right now just because it only works on the Chromebooks and it can actually mess with the way that phones or other devices are able to get onto the form. So for now, don't use this, but if in your classroom, every single student has a Chromebook, then you can turn this on and it will go into lock mode where they cannot go into any other tab or window while they're taking the assessment. So that's a pretty cool option. All right, so the send button, once again, you have 3 choices on how you're going to send this to people. So you can actually send it in an email and you can just type people's emails and send it directly to them. You can grab the link, which is what I feel like most of us do because we can add that link directly to Google Classroom, or you can actually embed it. So if you want to put it on a website, then you can embed that onto your website, which I know for 8th grade science, Johnson and Wilson, we've done this before when we did that breakout room where they had the created website and the form was within it. So that's another option for you to have on there. And then lastly, you have your 3 little dots, which is just like your more section. So on here, a lot of these are self-explanatory of what you can do, like making a copy or moving to the trash. But this is where you can add collaborators. So if you have multiple teachers or educators that need to be on here, they would be able to see the form, edit it, and be able to see the data collected. And then going back to add-ons, when we first talked about that puzzle piece at the top, if you didn't have it, this is where you would go first to get your add-ons. So if you click on the 3 dots and then click on add-ons, that's where you can search for Google Form add-ons and be able to add them from there. So that is an overview of what the toolbar is at the top and how you can use that. So moving on. So once you understand what the different toolbars are, obviously we can use a Google form, and the most, or the ways that it's used the most are for quizzes and assessments and surveys. But there are different ways that you can use Google Forms, and these are 3 different ways that I like to use it in my classes. So once again, this is interactive and you can click on each one. So I'm going to go through each one and just show you how to set it up. But once again, if you don't want to do this right now and you need to come back to it, on here I put examples of student ones that I have, and then also I have a video that you can click here and be able to watch that YouTube video on it. So the first one is like reteach or doing corrections. This is when you're going to branch a Google form. And so you're going to set it up so that the questions go to a specific section based on what students answered. There are tons of different ideas you can do with this, but the ones that I use the most for this is doing a reteach after a quiz or an assessment, like a CBA. And then I did scavenger hunts with this also. So I'm going to show you how to set this up and what you would need to do for this to happen. So going to a Google form, the biggest thing about this is that you have to set up different sections so that the answer choices have a place to go to after this. So I am going to set up some very, very simple questions on here just so you can see how this works. So what color is the sky? And I'm going to give a couple options. And then I'm going to add another question, but I cannot just add a question right here because then it's going to not know exactly what question to take to the next section. So I'm actually going to delete this question right here. And what I need to do first is click on what looks like an equal sign and add a section to this. So what I always like to do is I like to name them. So for instance, this could be my question number 2, since I already have a question up here. This is question number 2, and now I'm going to add the question. So what color is the grass? Very, very difficult things here. So put my options again. And then from here, what I'm going to do is I am going to click back up on my first question, and I'm going to click on these 3 dots right next to the required button. And I'm going to click on go to section based on answer. So now I'm going to set it up for them to go to a section based on what they answered. But before I can do this, I need to set up what their like reteach is going to be. So if they were to get what color is the sky wrong, they need to be able to learn more about that topic so that they're able to answer the question correctly. So I'm going to scroll back down and I'm going to add another section underneath this. And now I'm going to title this reteach question 1, just so I know exactly where it needs to go to and be able to have all of those things in order so it's not confusing for me later on. So from here, what I can do is, and what I normally would do is record myself teaching that topic using like Screencastify and then upload it to YouTube. So from here, I can add a video, and I'm just going to do one real quick so you can see how this works. Yeah, it's going to be a crash course video. So on here could be the video, and then I add the question again right underneath it. Okay, so we set up our first reteach section, and we're going to do one more for the next question. So for question reteach question 2. And then once again, you can add your question underneath this. You can add a video, or you can even add text, and then maybe you have a link that students could go to learn more about this. So for instance, I'm going to copy one from this other lesson plan I have over here, just so you can see what this looks like. And then once again, I'm going to put the question right underneath it. All right, so I'm going to go back up to our first question. And we already had set up go to section based on answer. So the answer is blue. That would be correct. So after they get it correct, I'm going to say they're going to go to the next question. So they got it right. They're just going to go to question number 2. But if they answered green or red, they got it wrong, which means they need to learn more about it. So I'm going to have them go to reteach question 1. So if they select one of these, it will send them to that section, and then they are able to learn more about it. So then I'm just going to set this up on each of the questions and sections. So once again, 3 dots, go to section based on answer. So blue would be incorrect here, which means they need to go to reteach question number 2. If they get green correct, since this is the last question, they're actually able to submit the form. So I'm going to submit form there. And then if they choose red, they need to be retaught. So they're going to go to reteach question number 2. So now down here, we're going to do the same thing. And since you already put the question in here, you don't have to worry about sending them back to the question and getting them to do that again. That was one thing I noticed when I first learned about this. That was kind of the way I set it up, and I had them go back to the question and all these different buttons they had to click, and it just got a little chaotic for them. So I just started adding the question once again right under the reteach. And then now if they're able to get blue correct this time, then I know they can move on to question number 2. But if they get it wrong, I just keep pushing them back to this section until they, one, watch the video, because most of the time they don't watch the video to be able to get the correct answer. And then they know that, hey, I'm still doing something wrong here. So they're able to reteach that. And then lastly, go down here. Once again, go to section based on answer. They get it wrong. Remember, I'm just going to kick them back to the same spot so that they can figure out what they're doing wrong. But on the correct answer, I can say that they're going to submit the form. So I'm going to show you what this looks like on here. So when they pick what color is the sky, I'm going to say it's green for now. And when I click next, it will then kick them to that reteach section. So they have to watch the video and then answer the question again. And if they get it right this time, then it will kick them to question number 2, and then they're able to answer question number 2. So once again, if they answer this one wrong, it'll go to reteach question number 2. Here's some more information about it, and then answer it. And when they get the correct answer, then it will allow them to submit the form to be able to finish. So that is one way that they're able to use this reteach in. Like I said, I use this for other things like scavenger hunts, just getting kids to do different things in different tasks, and it sends them different places. But another awesome thing that I've seen teachers do is to set up like pick your own path stories. So you could have students kind of pick which way they want to go based on their answer. And then advanced students that really know how to do this well could even create their own stories to share with others and be able to see that side of it where they're creating it rather than just doing it. So another really cool one to do. So going back, the next one is interactive notes or lessons on Google Forms. And I know Ardell is doing an entire webinar on this tomorrow, so she has a lot of great ideas for this, but I'm just gonna quickly show kind of what this looks like. So I use this a lot on days where I had to be gone, but students still needed to do notes. Think of this kind of like a HyperDoc on a Google form. So it is, sending students to different activities online, but you can add in follow-up questions and different things all in one place. So on this Google form, let me set up a new one real quick. On this form, I have already set up kind of like a little lesson plan that I want to do with my students. So this is all about Newton's second law. And on here, I have like my intro, and I want them to watch a video, and then they're going to have some follow-up questions. The next part, I want them to actually do a PhET simulation, so to practice with it. And then they have one question they have to answer. And then they're going to play a quizzes game to see how much they know about this law. So I can set this all up within a Google form and have students work on this. And like I said, it's all in one place, so they don't have to worry about doing different things on different places or having different links put in Google Classroom and overwhelm them with 3 different assignments. So I'm going to title this again. So here, and then it automatically titles it up there. I did want to tell you one little trick that I do on here. I always ask for this student's last name and first name separately. So I'll put last name and then first name. It's just easier, I think, to sort. the data that way once you're on the spreadsheet. And then one other thing that I always do is I would actually do a drop-down box and then put my class periods in here so that they can only pick, you know, their class period. And if they type it in, then you could have students doing, you know, second period, or they could just put 2 or second. And then when you're trying to sort the data on a spreadsheet, it doesn't always play out the way you want it to be. So just a couple more options here. So to get started with my notes, I'm going to create a new section again. So hit the section button, and then this is going to be my intro. So on here, I'm just going to say, make sure to read all the directions. So I need to first add a video on here, and I already have the link because I put this in my lesson plan. So I'm able to just copy and paste this YouTube link on here by clicking on the play add a video button, URL, and then paste that URL. And here's the video I want them to see. Once your video is on here, you have a couple options for setting it up. I always like to center align it just to make it look a little bit better. You also can change the size of it just by clicking on the video and resizing it. So here's the video they're gonna watch. So right here, it's I could title it, but just you know, make sure watch the video and answer the questions. Here could be their directions also. So underneath it, I'm going to add my questions, and I already had those in my lesson plan. So I could just copy and paste those over, and then same thing like we've done before, just setting up your questions the way you want them to be. If you want it to be multiple choice, you can put this here and have different answer choices and keep going, okay? So you can have that set up on here also. You can also do your open-ended questions. So the next one I had on here was open-ended. Just copy and paste that over so that students can tell me what was the difference or what happened to the objects in the video, and making sure they're actually watching it and you know what's going on. So here's an example of one set of notes that I would have. So after I would add a new section, and this is going to be my explain or practice section. And on here, this is where I'm going to add that link for the PhET simulation. So on this one, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to add a text section. And then on here, I can put my link and put my directions on this one. So on here, I am going to, once again, just copy and paste what I have. And these are all things that you can do with your links. And, you know, these are lesson plans you already have set up. So all you could do is just put them into a Google form now. The good thing about when you put links on here, they do hyperlink for students. So they don't have to, you know, you don't have to tell them, oh, you need to go copy and paste this. It will be a clickable link once you are on the actual form. And then from here, once again, you can add a follow-up question and have your question on here. And then lastly, I have one more thing for them. So I'm going to add one more section. This is their apply section, even though they're doing a quiz on it. And once again, I'm going to add that text box and then copy and paste my information over for the quizzes that they're doing, so they can get that done. So from here, once again, I'm just going to show you what this looks like as a student. I'll put test. And then they're only able to see one section at a time. So here is their video they have to watch, and then they have their follow-up questions. And once they've done this, it will take them to their next section. And then they can go to their PhET simulation, here are their directions, and then, you know, the question I didn't set up. But here's what it would look like. So you have an overview of that. All right. So then lastly, the last thing that you can use Google Forms for are digital lockouts. And then I also use this for students to check answers on different assignments that they're doing so that they can see kind of what their mistakes are. What you're really doing is just validating their responses, and it will set up all on a Google form for you. So once again, we're going to open up a new Google form. and I'm going to title it. So I call these lockouts, but you know, breakouts, all the same thing. So on here, what you're going to do is you're going to set up the questions to have a response validations that students have to have the correct answer to be able to submit the form. So on the question, you have a couple options with this. Sometimes I would use Google Forms to create the lockout, even though the students were still doing like hands-on things in class. So, you know, they could still be doing different activities even while at home. Like you could send them to do a matching activity, and then from that matching activity, they have a code. So you're able to do it that way, or you can set it up like code answers they have to figure out. So, you know, you could just do lock number 1. And on here, it will actually, because Google Forms is used so often for this, they will automatically set up the response validation. But if it doesn't set up for you, you're going to click on these 3 dots down at the bottom, and you would click on response validation, and that's how you would get it. Now, this only works for short answers. You can't do like a multiple choice and it be response validation. It doesn't work that way. So from here, you're going to have your response validation box pull up. Now, on this one, I always pick regular expression, and the reason I do that is because I can make it match identically. The things I've found before is when I've done like numbers and I say, you know, it's equal to or even contains sometimes. Where's that one? Like, you know, is number, just different ones on here. Sometimes I found that students can figure out ways around it or put the numbers in different orders and it still works. So I like to use the regular expression, and then I like to have matches. So then if I want my code, you know, it's 1, 2, 3, then I'm going to put what the answer would be there. And in a custom error text, you have to type something, because if you don't type something, it will show them the answer. So I may put try again, or I could type a hint here to help them get to the answer. So from here, you can also add a description box right underneath your question to help them a little bit. So you could say like, this is a 3-digit number. Oops. Number lock. So then they would know, okay, well, I'm looking for 3 numbers and it has to be 3, or sorry, I'm looking for a number lock and it's going to be 3 numbers, just to help them out. I know that this also can depend on students' ages, on how much help you give them also. All right. Okay, so then the other way that you can do this is you can actually set it up and make it, like I said, kind of like codes. So I have a student example on there that I used for, or I think we used in 8th grade science for like tectonic plates or topographic maps. And so on there, we didn't have it just like lock number 1. We actually gave them different codes to figure out, and they kind of had to break it down and use their knowledge on the topic to figure out a code that could unlock it. So one that you could do, I was just talking about Newton's second law, so this came to mind. So Newton's second law, and the thing I want them to figure out is what is the formula we use for the second law, but I want them to do acceleration. I'm going to spell it wrong now that I'm on computer, or now that I'm on camera, right? Of course. Acceleration, there we go, first. So now they have to figure out the code, but it has to be the formula for Newton's second law, but I want them to put the A equals first. So I'm going to go to short answer, and then from short answer, I'm going to go to response validation, regular expression, matches. Science teachers, don't get mad at me if I do this wrong. So force equals mass times acceleration, so that would be A equals force divided by mass, I think. And then remember, you have to put a custom error text or it would show them the answer. So now once again on this is a pretty specific code that they have to type in. So you can add your description and write on here like all caps, no spaces. So they would know that their formula needs to be all capital letters and don't put any spaces in there, or it's going to mark it as wrong. Another thing I see teachers struggle with a little bit is if you put a space after the answer, then the students also have to put a space after the answer. So just make sure that you're not putting anything there that could throw off the answer for students. So from here, just once again, I want to show you what this looks like. And on here, they are going to type their answer. And if it's wrong, you're going to pull up that custom error text, and it will stay there until they type the correct answer, and it will go, it will let them move on. But it will not let them submit the form until all of their answers are correct. So for instance, on this one, if they did force equals mass times acceleration, that isn't the correct answer, so it won't let them submit it. It has to be correct. So this is really fun to play games with, because then students have to kind of race to get the correct answer, and they like that, like gamification of it. So all the answers are correct, therefore you'd be able to submit it, and it lets you move on. And like I said, I use this also for answer checks, just so students can see if they're getting answers right or wrong. Like if they were assigned something and they couldn't get my help right away, like right now, this would be a great time to just set it up, and they can see, hey, am I going in the right direction of getting some of these right or not getting any of them right? How am I doing? Once again, there is a video here if you need to watch that again on how to set it up. So very last thing I'm going to talk about is the responses. So once students or just different people start filling out your Google Forms, what are you able to see? So you are able to see the responses 3 different ways on the actual Google form. You can see it by a summary of everyone who has filled it out, by each question, or by each individual respondent. And you can just click on these tabs at the top to see each of them. And then you also have responses settings that you can set up. So over on the top of your responses, there's 3 dots. And if you click on these 3 dots, you're going to get a drop-down menu that looks like this. I think my favorite feature on this one is that you can get an email every time someone completes a form. I wouldn't necessarily do this if students were completing the form, but if I had sent this out to teachers or a specific group of students, then I like to set it up so I know exactly when they fill it out. I would do this when students did corrections, because then I could go in and automatically grade it and be able to fix it in Skyward. So there was always an alert for me, and I didn't have to go back and check every week. It was just there in my email. So then you can select response destination. So if you want to pick where the spreadsheet or where your responses go to a spreadsheet, you can pick that on here. This one that's grayed out right now, it's because I hadn't linked it to a spreadsheet yet. But if you figure out that you linked it to a new spreadsheet, but you wanted to connect it to an old spreadsheet, you're able to actually unlink it and kind of start over from there. So you can put all that information on a different spreadsheet. And then you can also download these, and it will go to a CSV file, which is for Excel. And then print responses and delete is self-explanatory. Okay, so last thing on here, if you need to turn your Google form off for any reason. So this actually happened to us a couple weeks ago when we had a form for teachers to fill out of all the students that hadn't been making contact. We figured out the form just wasn't working the way we needed it to, so we actually just shut it down so no more teachers wasted time on it. So you can toggle this and turn it on that you're not accepting responses anymore, and then you can type a message as to why, or just leave it as it is with this form is no longer accepting responses. But if you had something that was time sensitive, that you could just shut this form off, but you don't have to worry about deleting it, because then you still have all of your data on it. So that's an option for you. Like if you had students signing up for, I don't know, a field trip, or, for presenting or something. If they didn't do it in time, then it shut off and they get last pick. So that's an option for you. So that is it about forms. I did want to mention that I didn't talk about the spreadsheet section of it, because I am talking about Google Sheets on Friday. So there's just kind of like a little plug to come watch another webinar on Friday about Google Sheets and how you can organize your data and what you can do with it and such. But really that is it on this very last slide, there is the link to the Google Forms help page. So any questions you may have when setting it up, they have really good instructions on there. And then there was this really cool article from Matt Miller, who does Ditch That Textbook, and he had ideas for using Google Forms in class. So just different things you could do besides those other 3 things. But here's my contact information if you need it. And thank you for joining. But I'm going to stay on. So just type in any questions you have or unmute your mic. Let me know. And I can help you, or Jennifer can help you.
That was awesome. Thank you. I loved it.
I always talk so fast that I like get out of breath myself. I'm like, oh gosh.
No, you did great. Oh, here's somebody posted something.
Oh, thanks, Chelsea. The recording now.